What's up, Fantasy World? I'm Kevin Wells. Welcome to another edition of Fantasy Wizards. Glad to be back with you guys here. I'm in a new spot. I'm in my living room now instead of my normal bedroom. So, Scott, thanks for being on the show again tonight. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. It's a great time of the year. I was talking on Tuesday about how I made five out of the seven leagues I'm in. I made the playoffs, and I managed to get four buys out of that. So I've got a quiet week coming up,
Yeah, it is
which should be
playoff
good.
week. That it is an exciting time for fantasy football players, especially if you are in the playoffs. I managed to make the playoffs in one of my leagues. My other league, I finished a half game out. Finished 7-6, and I couldn't get in. A guy with a tie ended up getting ahead of me, even though I beat him earlier this year. So unfortunate in that league, but my one league, I'm looking pretty good, and we're hoping to make you guys even better going into this playoff week because we know we want to win some championships, and if we can help you do that, we're doing our job here at Fantasy Wizards. So I hope you all enjoyed the Tuesday edition of the show, but it's time to get this Thursday edition going here. Let's get it started, Scott.
Well, and Kevin, this, all year, no matter what, people are concerned about injuries, but this time of the year, there's no margin for error. So I
Nope.
want to just run down some injury updates and we can go pretty quickly. But as of today, Thursday night, people who are likely to play, unlikely to play, and game time decisions. So Mark Ingram is playing, he's active. So
Yep,
that's the
I did
that's
hear that.
so if you were worried about the turf toe, it looks like he's healthy and good to go. Looks like Matthew Stafford's going to be good to go. Looks like Kelvin Benjamin practiced fully today, and he could be good to go as well. Sterling Shepard should play as well as Greg Olson, Matt Forte, Kevin Hogan, Will Fuller, and Jimmy Graham. Guys unlikely to play: Joe Mixon, Robert Woods, Damian Williams, and Adrian Peterson. Now, here are the ones to be weary of, Kevin. Tyrod Taylor's going to be, we won't know about him until at least after tomorrow's practice. Zach Ertz hasn't cleared concussion protocol. When you
Nope.
consider he's hurt and Gronkowski's suspended, some people might be looking for a tight end. Amari Cooper's ankle, he's going to test it again tomorrow. Jordan Reed likely won't play. Doug Martin, not sure about. And showing up on the injury report, Robbie Anderson, and there's a good chance he may not play. So those are some high-profile players that people have to worry about.
A lot of game-changing type of players too. Let's start with the likely to play. Stafford's fingers were taped at practice today. He was throwing at about 75% according to their beat writers. So he's a guy I'm still going to start. It's one of those where you have to wait till Sunday. It's just to be precautionary, especially in this first round of the playoffs. Every move you make matters. So Kelvin Benjamin, he's still playing hurt. Tyrod Taylor, one to talk about. He's probably not going to play this week, from what I've been hearing. So Kelvin Benjamin's a guy you really want to probably put on your bench, even if he is playing healthy, because we all know how the backup did in his first half performance a few weeks ago with those 5 interceptions. Eli's back at the helm for Sterling Shepard. Shepard should be a good to go. You're definitely going to want to start him just because I think Eli Manning's he's going to play with a chip on his shoulder. This is one of those games he's going to prove Ben McAdoo, who was just fired this week, he's going to try and prove him wrong. Ingram, toe is not an issue. Definitely a good start today. Atlanta defense, not great, not bad. They're right in the middle of the pack according to run defense. They give up about 115 yards a game, and Ingram's been having a career year behind in the backfield, so he's a definite start for me. But here's one guy I really want to talk about because you may be thinking about not starting him, and that's Matt Forte. This Denver defense that he's playing this Sunday is an absolute train wreck, and Matt Forte had a lot more time in the red zone last Sunday. He got more touches than normal. He could be really taking over as the guy maybe in the red zone for them, and I'm starting him. I think from here on out, Matt Forte is a guy you're going to want to start. He's a guy that's going to get you points and maybe some more touchdowns. He could become that red zone target, like I just said. Hogan, Gronk's suspended, so Hogan's going to see a lot of balls thrown at him. We all know Julian Edelman's missing the year. You could also see the Patriots maybe rely more on their run game, but we'll talk about more like that in a bit. But yeah, with Zach Ertz, that's probably the biggest name on this list. He's been the best tight end all year, number one wideout in Philly, and he's in one of my leagues, the league I'm competing in. So it's a big blow to my team. I got to figure out a way to get him going, or get him going, get another guy to fill him in. And if any of you guys have questions or things for me, I'd greatly appreciate it because I need to get going on that.
Yeah, and there's some other guys out there. So Delaney Walker's a little banged up. It looks like Clay's healthy, but we talked about the quarterback situation in Buffalo. So there might not be a lot out on the waiver wire if you're looking for a tight end. But you did mention, or we did mention at least, that there's an injury to Adrian Peterson. And
Yes, he was.
Donnell had asked me a question. Apparently, he's in the playoffs. He's looking to pick up one of these two running backs with Peterson being out, and Peterson was one of his running backs. Curran Williams, who is the backup to Peterson in Arizona, or Orleans Darkwa. Now, Darkwa's playing against a softer Dallas defense. Curran Williams, on the other hand, is playing against the Titans defense that's pretty good against the run. Neither player is a superstar, but if you had to pick one of those players, who would you pick?
I really liked Kerwin Williams last week. Personally, I know he's going against a tougher run defense, but I'm still starting him. I liked the way he looked last week. He had just under 100 yards on the ground with Adrian Peterson out, and he was the majority of that offense. I don't expect that to change. The Arizona really has a run-first kind of mentality. So I'm going to start Kerwin Williams.
All right. I'm kind of torn. I guess I'd go Williams too, just because maybe they're at home, even though they're playing a tougher defense. I like that play. Marcus is looking for two running backs. Now here's a guy who's on the rise in Rex Burkhead. Although at any given time, Bill Belichick could pull the rug out from under us and give him 5 carries next week. But he's looking for two running backs. I guess he's got a starter, and he's looking for another running back and a flex out of these 3. So Burkhead, Todd Gurley, or Duke Johnson. Now, Duke Johnson's an intriguing play because he's playing against the Green Bay Packers defense that's terrible. Johnson's had some good numbers, surprisingly, quietly good numbers in Cleveland. Gurley, you have to start, I think. So really, out of those, Burkhead or Duke Johnson, which one of those two would you go with?
I think Bill Belichick's hands are tied. I think you got to start Burkhead here. You don't have Gronk this week. I don't know if we're going to hear about his appeal. He did appeal his suspension for that horrible hit on the sideline. Very dirty, very boneheaded, stupid play. But I think Burkhead's going to get the majority of the touches on offense this Sunday just because I think Tom Brady's hands are tied. He's going to have either Amendola to throw to or, he's going to either have or Chris Hogan. Both guys that I don't know if he has a lot of faith in. So I think I'm definitely starting Todd Gurley. Todd Gurley's been unbelievable this year. You have to start him. But I'm also going to go Burkhead. I don't see the Patriots pulling the rug on him this week. Maybe next week you'd be a little bit more weary if Gronk comes back. But as of right now, no. Burkhead's my guy. I'm going with him.
I agree. I'm going to say Burkhead as well. We'll run through a few of these questions, then we'll get into the meat and potatoes of some of these games. Al's looking for a quarterback. It's funny because these two quarterbacks are playing against each other. Case Keenum or Cam Newton. I'll tell you what, Case Keenum's been really, really good. Cam Newton's had some decent stats, but he's been inconsistent. Minnesota's defense is pretty solid. I mean, if I got to pick one of those two, who would have ever thought when the season started that I'd be saying Case Keenum over Cam Newton? But that's the way I'm leaning this week.
Oh, Case Keenum 10 times out of 10 in this one. He had 27 2 weeks ago, and he put up over 33 points in fantasy last week. And Cam Newton is a guy who really struggles for whatever reason, he really struggles against the Vikings. I mean, his last couple times out there, he's thrown 4 picks and 2 interceptions against the Zimmerman defense. So for me, it's a no-brainer. It's Case Keenum. Keenum has been he's got to be in the MVP category right now. I don't think he'll win it just because the other quarterback plays this year. We've had some really good quarterbacks in the league this year with Brady. I mean, I wish I could say Rodgers, but unfortunately not for him. But we've had a lot of good quarterback play.
Yeah, Carson Wentz has been amazing.
Yeah, that's what I was going for, Carson Wentz. But I think you got to start Case Keenum in this one. He also has to be in that category for MVP. He's a start 10 times out of 10, even for the rest of the year. I like Case Keenum a lot.
Yeah, I as well. Kevin Wells, Scott Wisniewski, it's Fantasy Wizards on Public House Media. It's our Thursday edition as we get you ready for the week's play. A couple more questions. And this one's pertinent to tonight's game. Again, 2 players going against each other. I guess we better answer this question now in the next 45 minutes.
Yeah, we
But
got to get it going.
he needs a wide receiver, Mike, and it's a PPR league. Mike Thomas, Julio Jones. Julio Jones had a huge week 2 weeks ago. He's had some pedestrian weeks, including a 2-catch for like 10-yard week last week. Mike Thomas doesn't get the big yards that people had hoped because Breeze isn't throwing the ball down the field, but he's getting a ton of catches, 6-7 catches a game. Boy, this is a tough one. He can only pick one. Who are you picking?
Well, Julio's a star for me every week, and that's just because the Falcons are in that spot now where they're trying to make the playoffs, and their running game hasn't been anything this year. Watch for Tavon Coleman this week, though. He could be a guy to look for. But right now, definitely going Julio on this one, just because he's a guy that's going to step up in this big rivalry matchup tonight. And I just don't see any reason to bench him. You got to put him out there for sure. I just don't see any sort of reason, despite Michael Thomas having a great year and Drew Brees at the helm. The only thing you could really vouch for is if Mark Ingram really is hurt, but he's not. They've said his toe that isn't an issue. So Breeze is going to be a pretty even offensive game from the Saints standpoint. So I'm going Julio Jones here, Scott.
I want to know, and he didn't give me any details. I want to know who else Sam has that he can only choose one of these two. So he must have another receiver that's a no-brainer. Maybe it's.
I was going to say, there's no way you want to start both of those guys, right?
Right. So I don't know. Obviously, he must be stacked if he's in the playoffs, but not stacked enough to get a bye, which is kind of interesting. But yeah, I think it's hard. Julio Jones was a first rounder. I think it's really hard to not start him. I mean, you just have to live and die with your studs, especially this time of the year. So I think I agree with you.
You never know when they're going to go off. You never know when they're going to have an unreal game, 3 touchdowns. That could come for Julio. He hasn't had one of those in a little bit. He had a great game, like you said, 2 weeks ago. But there's no reason not to start him in this game, especially in a rivalry game where he's going to be playing his you-know-what off. So,
absolutely. Hey, Kevin, this one isn't a misprint. Chris asked us this question last week. He was on the verge. He made the playoffs, and he's asking the same question. Quarterback, Josh McCown or Derek Carr? Now, Carr will have Crabtree back. He's playing a terrible Chiefs secondary, and Cooper may play as well. McCown, on the other hand, has been very good as well, but he might be without Anderson, his top receiver. I like McCown. He's been the better quarterback as far as consistency goes, but I think the matchup to me makes me feel Derek Carr. In fact, Carr, last time he played the Chiefs earlier this season, threw for 417 yards.
I got to agree with you on this one, Scott. Originally, I would have said Josh McCown just because of the last couple of weeks he's been phenomenal. Amari Cooper is up in the air right now. They said in practice today he has a noticeable limp, so if it's noticeable enough, we're a few days away. It could be a Sunday start for him, but I got to go Carr. Carr, like you said, those 417 yards last week, or not last week, the last game he played against them. There's really no argument for me to put McCown in this one. He's going against a tougher secondary, but it's tough. It's, once again, you could start McCown because he has had a couple great weeks in a row, almost 30 points in his last 2 weeks, fantasy-wise. So, but your safer bet is definitely Derek Carr on this one.
Yeah, I think I agree 100%. By the way, our friend Greg from the Greg and Dave show is checking in. He's saying hello, and hello, Greg. It's hope you're doing
Greg,
well.
How are you?
We haven't actually spoken. I haven't physically spoken to Greg since our draft back in September. Well, yeah, early September. So hope all is well. So here's another question, and this is a tough one for Brian. Brian wants to know if he should start Carlos Hyde or Theo Riddick. I'm starting to just throw the towel in on Hyde. Theo Riddick is been named the starter, even if Abdullah is healthy and able to play. Playing against the Buccaneers defense that got shredded by the Packers running game. I think you got to go Theo Riddick here.
And I just don't see him being the number one back there. He didn't really do much against the Bears last week. Theo Riddick's a start for me in this one, no question about it. I really haven't been impressed with Carlos Hyde at all.
All right, let's talk about tonight's game. So we already kind of helped somebody out who was wondering if he should start Michael Thomas or Julio Jones. So let's answer a few burning questions. Kevin, let's start with Alvin Kamara, over under 100 total yards.
Alvin Kamara tonight. He's shown me a lot this year, and I really like him. I think he's going to go over. In a rival matchup, these guys are going to step up. I'm going over for him. I really like the way he's played.
Yeah, me too, because he's also a guy who can catch the ball and take it to the house. So I kind of like that play as
Yeah, I'd
well.
love to see that stat, his yards after carry, because he seems to be one of those guys that has a real. He's got to be top 10 in the league in yards after carry. He does seem to do that a lot, so that's definitely a good point there, Scott.
Who's a better play at quarterback, Drew Brees or Matt Ryan?
This is a tough one. I really don't know who I like more in this one. Consistency wise, I'm gonna go Drew Brees, but I want to say Matt Ryan because I know they're fighting for a playoff spot, and we were just talking highly on Julio Jones in his great week a few weeks ago. This game's gonna be, I think it's gonna be a pretty high scoring game. But I'm gonna have to say Drew Brees on this one. I think he's gonna get more of the touches. I think they're gonna be weary with Mark Ingram. I just have to go with Breeze just based on pedigree and based on the season he's had.
I'll tell you what, this is one of three huge games in the NFC that'll kind of help shape the playoff picture. Saints,
Absolutely.
Falcons, the other ones being, of course, Vikings, Panthers, and Rams and Eagles. Um, I'm going to say Breeze as well, but only because Matt Ryan's just been really inconsistent this year. Um,
hmm
Here's one, over under for Devontae Freeman, 75 yards. I'm going to say under.
I'm gonna go under as well. Last week I said over, and he burned me, and he didn't do that. So I'm gonna rescind my prediction from last week, and I'm gonna go under for Freeman. I think Tavon Coleman is gonna get more touches tonight, and I think he's gonna have a better game. He's someone I want to watch, especially in this one. So yeah, I'm definitely going under for Freeman. So far this year, really hasn't had the year he had last year. I mean, last year we were seeing him put up 2, 3 touchdowns a game. This year less than 600 yards on the ground so far, only 5 scores. I think he's still going under 75 for him.
You know, a lot of people forget, though, he had that breakout year last year, but in game one last year, him and Coleman split carries. In game two, Coleman got hurt, missed like 5 or 6 games. Freeman took that job, but this year it's been Coleman who's been healthy and Freeman who's been a little banged up.
Yep.
Lastly, Julio Jones over under 75 yards.
I'm going to go over. I think he's going to have around 120, 125 yards and this touchdown tonight. I think that's a pretty fair estimate for him considering how much we just talked him up. So hopefully he can pull through for us on that one.
I think you're absolutely right as well. All right, let's talk about some of the other games. Burning questions. There's like 1 or 2 questions for every game here. We'll start Colts Bills over under T.Y. Hilton 5 catches. I say under.
You want to know what's funny? Before we get into that, I saw an article online about this game. Tickets selling for $4. Oh man, that's pretty insane. I got a couple friends who are Colts and Bills fans, so they were having a good time joking about that. But I'm gonna go over 5 catches for T.Y. Hilton this week. I don't like the Bills' defense at all. Ever since they're close to making the playoffs a few weeks ago and people started talking about it, they've fallen off completely. I think Hilton's going to have a decent game. I think he's going to have at least 6, 7 catches in this one.
Here's a tricky one. Over under for LaShawn McCoy, 85 yards. And I think it really depends. I think if Taylor doesn't play, the defense is going to load up the box and try to stop McCoy, and I would say under. I think if Taylor plays, I say over. So, boy, I know that's not really an answer, but without a clear-cut starter at quarterback this week, I'm going to say under because I think that Taylor won't play.
I don't think Taylor's playing either, but I I gotta say over just for the sake of my fantasy league. McCoy has not done anything for me these last few weeks. I need him to have over 85 rushing yards. But like you said, with Tyrod up in the air in his question, he's probably not going to play. I'm going to have to say under. As much as I want to say over, I have to agree with you, Scott. They're going to load up, and they're going to be able to focus a lot. They're not going to have to focus on the quarterback too much. That situation over there is pretty dismal. Tyrod Taylor, not that great anyway, but he certainly is what the offense is fitted to. and their backup. I can't remember his name off the top of my head, but I mean, it was his last
Peter.
showing was completely dismal. So I'm going under for McCoy.
Yeah, I think you're right. Raiders and the Chiefs. Here's an interesting question that, again, 8 weeks ago we would never have thought to ask. Better play Marshawn Lynch or Kareem Hunt?
Well, Marshawn Lynch is still battling a little bit of an injury from what I've been seeing lately. So he's a guy. He's one of those guys you want to wait till Sunday maybe to put him out there. You got to wait till he's officially cleared and you see him a little bit on camera, see a little bit of the footage from a writer or something, because he could be one of those guys that's like, oh, I'm ready to play, but then you go out there and he's still playing with a little bit of a limp. I'm gonna go Kareem Hunt. He struggled these last few weeks. He started out the year fantastic. It's about time he breaks out. And I think that Lynch is still a little bit hurt, so that's the reason I'm picking Hunt.
I don't know. The way Hunt has played lately, a pirate with a peg leg might be able to run for more yards. Um, I'm going to roll the dice and say Hunt, but again, maybe I'm just being selfish. I have Kareem Hunt, and in the one league that I don't have a buy-in, I need him. So I'll say Hunt as well and hope I'm right. Lions play the Buccaneers. Better play in this game, Marvin Jones or Doug Evans?
You still there, Scott?
Yeah, hi. Can you hear me
I'm
now?
sorry, we lost a little bit of connection there. What was the question?
The question is Marvin Jones or Doug Evans? Who's a better play?
I don't know on this one. This is another one of those where you could kind of just throw it in the air. I like Marvin Jones. I think he's been involved in that offense a lot more this year than he was in previous weeks. And I'm from what I remember, I can't remember. Did he had a pretty decent week last week? Marvin Jones is. I'm going to pick Jones on this one. What do you think, Scott?
Yeah, me too. I think there's something wrong with Jameis Winston. He looked injured last week against the Packers. He had chances to run and he didn't. He showed some bad pocket presence, and I think Marvin Jones is the play here as well. Packers Browns, better play Jamal Williams or Isaiah Crowell? I'll start with this one. I'm going to say Williams just because Crowell hasn't been that impressive, and the only way the Packers are going to move the ball, I think, anymore is on the ground.
I was going to say the same. I like the way that Hundley's been playing these last couple weeks, but once again, we really haven't we haven't seen much out of the passing game at all. It's been a lot more on the ground, so I'm going to go Williams too. Browns with a pretty bad run defense. So I think this is a no-brainer for me. Williams, with the Packers pretty beat up on the running side of the ball too, he's going to get a lot of the touches. So I definitely think that's a good play.
Speaking of bad defenses, the Packers are a very bad defense. Josh Gordon, over under 100 yards.
He had 85 last week in his comeback and forth. He's going to have over. I predicted him to have over last week. I was wrong. He was close, but he's going to have over 100 yards this week. Josh Gordon, people forget how good he is, man. He's out of the league for a few years, and you forget how fast and how athletic he still is. He's going to burn that Packers secondary. I think King will be the necessary guy that's probably going to guard him
King's
at
out.
The corner spot.
Yeah, King's
out.
hurt. Yeah, he's out for the year
boy.
now. So
then definitely, I didn't even hear about that. So definitely over 100 yards for Josh Gordon then, because that Packers secondary is not looking too hot.
No, and remember, he had 85 yards against the Charger team that's number 3 against the pass. So that was a good pass defense. They're playing a bad one now. Boy, he's going to run all day. Cowboys take on the Giants. Here's an interesting question. Better play, Dak Prescott or Eli Manning?
Now, my hunch is to say Dak Prescott because he has more options. But Eli Manning, like I said earlier in the show, is going to be playing with a chip on his shoulder. He wants to stick it to this Giants team. Although the coach that decided to bench him is gone now, you know he wants to prove that if this is one of his last matchups in a Giants uniform, which it very well could be, he's going to give it all he's got. That being said, I think your safer bet is still to play Prescott in this one. Dallas they've struggled immensely on the offensive side of the ball. They haven't been able to move the ball. Prescott's been really bad lately, but for me, this is a toss-up, but I think your safer bet is still Dak Prescott.
I'm going to go Eli Manning, and I can't believe that McAdoo decided to die on that hill with this Eli Manning stand. He could have reversed it. They could have fired him on Saturday, but whatever. It was a dumb move, and that guy Good riddance to him. I'm not even a Giants fan. I just think he's an idiot.
It's one of the dumbest moves I've ever seen. So I'm in complete agreement.
Over under Des Bryant, 65 yards.
I'm gonna go over for Dez. He's been showing a lot more consistency lately, especially in the fantasy stats. I like him for over 65 this one against this secondary in New York. So I'm gonna go. I think Dez is gonna have not 100 yards. I think he'll have about 80, 90 though.
I think I read a stat where when they target him this year more than 6 times, they've I think they're 4-1 or something like that. So if they're smart, they're going to look for Des Bryant, and I say over as well. 49ers, Texas, this is easy. Carlos Hyde, Lamar Miller.
Yeah, no question. Lamar Miller. Carlos Hyde's been terrible all year. He's really been a nobody. The Bears shut him down last week, if that tells you anything. So no go for Hyde. Definitely Lamar Miller.
Couple for the Bears-Bengals game. Over under for Andy Dalton, 1.5 touchdowns.
Over. I think he's going to have 2 or 3. Bears have just not been able to get themselves together defensively all year. They're still beat up at the linebacker position. Trevathan played last week, didn't play very well. Bears pass rush wasn't as good as it has normally been. So I think Andy Dalton's going to have a little bit of an easier time this week. And with what they did last week, they didn't allow any touchdowns to San Francisco, but still lose the game. I just think strictly because of the pass rush and the lack of linebackers, which is what the Bears rely on in their defensive scheme. I think Dalton's going to have a relatively easy time. I'll go 2 to 3 touchdowns for him.
The Robbie Gould revenge game. I'm going to say 2, so I'll say over as well. Speaking of that, AJ Green over under 80 yards. I feel over there as well.
Oh yeah, he's going to go way over. There's no question about it, and that's just because, once again, it just seems to be. I mean, I don't want to say way over. I'll take that back. And I don't want to be super down on this Bears secondary because they have shown up in games that they've needed to show up in, but they still can't defend the pass over the middle. They get burned constantly. And with A.J. Green being much taller, he's probably going to be guarded by Kyle Fuller. Fuller got his first interception last week. He only has 1. I think he's going to have over. I don't want to say way over, but he's definitely going to have 100 yards in this game.
And I think the Bears, and I've been saying this, I don't know why there's games where he just kind of disappears, but Howard, 90 yards over under, what do you think?
I don't know, man. This is another tough one, just because Jordan Howard has been pretty non-existent, and I'm not sure why. I wish I had the answer to it, because going into this year, he was the second highest rusher in the league behind Ezekiel Elliott last year, and it's tough to sit here and say as a Bears fan that I'm not sure how he's going to do, but I think he's going to be under. I just, unless there's some way that they can, and the Bears offensive line's beat up too. Yeah, I'm definitely going under here. I mean, they just put Kyle Long on season-ending IR. Without him, their running game has been almost nothing, and he's been hurt a lot of these last couple seasons. So without him, nothing. I think he's going to have a pretty dismal game.
Yeah, last 2 games, 20 carries, 44 yards for Jordan Howard. Vikings play the Panthers. Better play at receiver, Adam Thielen or Devin Funchess? Now, I will preface this by saying Thielen has been the better receiver, but Funchess is really the only guy right now, so he's going to get a ton of targets.
I'm a Thielen guy. I like. Sorry,
Okay.
A little bit of a connection issue right now. I'm getting a little bit of feedback and everything, but like you said, I like Adam Thielen too, Scott. I don't find a way to bench him. He's been getting touchdowns every single game. He seems to be that number 1 target now out there now. So I'm going Thielen all day. I don't think that there's a way you can bench him. Now, what were you saying earlier?
Well, I was saying with Funchess, what makes him interesting is he's the only guy right now that's a proven receiver, so he's going to get a ton of targets. That said, I still think Thielen's the better play, but I think Carolina's going to be down in this game, and they're going to throw the ball a lot, so it does make it an intriguing option.
Yeah, and remember the stat we were talking about earlier. He struggles. Cam Newton's really struggled with the Vikings defense. Zimmer's really had his number, so I still think I still think Thielen's the move on this one. But yeah, like you said, that he is going to get a lot of touches just because of how beat up that entire offense is. I mean, Greg Olsen is reportedly going to play this week. He was full strength in practice, so that could also take away from Funchess' touches. I'm going Thielen. That's just me personally. I think he's going to get a lot of touches this week, and he's been awesome this year. He's been a top 3 receiver in football. So
I would then assume Cam Newton total touchdowns 2.5 over under. I would assume you're going to say under. I think I'll say 2 will be what he ends up with.
I'm going to go under. I think he's going to have maybe 1 throwing, maybe 1 rushing. But yeah, I'm going under for him for sure.
All right, now we move into the 3 o'clock games or the 3:25 games. Jets Broncos over under for Josh McCown 250 yards.
Over. I like the way Josh McCown's played lately. That's really all I can say. It's purely a guess on this one. You could see it. You could see Von Miller and that Broncos defense come out of nowhere. But right now, they've shown me absolutely nothing, and Josh McCown has showed me a lot. So I'm going over.
Redskins Chargers over under Phillip Rivers 2.5 touchdowns.
I'm gonna go over. I think he's gonna have 3. What about you?
I agree. I say over, and I also say Keenan Allen for 100 yards. I say over. He's been on fire lately.
I agree 100%. Yeah, it's so funny how the AFC has just completely changed that entire dynamic. We really thought that there would be a difference, different teams coming out of it this year, and maybe the Chiefs, maybe Oakland. Oakland had a lot of hype. Both those teams are pretty nothing now. The Chargers seem to be the team to beat now in the AFC besides the Patriots, which is really surprising. But yeah, I'm going over for him.
If only they could have figured out a way to win a couple of those early games. If they didn't have the kicker issues, they'd be easily in control of this division.
No kidding.
Titans Cardinals. Here's a really weird question. Better play Marcus Mariota or Blaine Gabbert?
Well, if you read a lot of stuff online about fantasy football, everyone is done with Marcus Mariota. He had a pretty good week last week, but that was his first good week in a long time. I'm going Blaine Gabbert.
I am too. Again, who would have thought?
Who would have thought? Yeah.
When we did our first show that we'd even bring up Blaine Gabbert's name, but he's become relevant. Over under Larry Fitzgerald, 6 catches. I say over. Feed him the rock.
Absolutely. Beat up backfield. Adrian Peterson was probably 60-70% of that offense. You can't really rely on the running game too much if you're the Cardinals. Fitzgerald's due to have one heck of a game. He's had a couple of good ones this year, but he's due to really break out one of these weeks. And with us coming down to the end and them fighting for a spot too, Fitzgerald definitely. I'm going over. I think he's gonna have 8 or 9 catches this game.
Here's an interesting question: Seahawks Jaguars. I know the Jaguars defense, especially their secondary, has been really good. Russell Wilson, a dual threat. Over under 250 total yards for Russell Wilson.
Well, the way he played against the Eagles, and the Eagles have probably the best secondary in the league. I know that's up to discretion, but just the way he played against the Eagles, man, I don't think there's any way you can argue that he's not going to have over 250 yards against Jacksonville. I know Jacksonville's had a really good year, very quiet good year, but they have. I'm still going over for Wilson. He's also in that MVP watch, like we were saying. I think right now it's Brady, Wilson, and Wentz. Also, you got to talk about Vikings, but I think he's going to have over.
I agree. I absolutely think he'll, the way he runs the ball, the way he can move out of the pocket, the way he just kind of plays like he's on a playground, just kind of throws some balls up. I definitely think he'll be over. Better play, Fournette or Davis, who now seems to be the running back du jour for the Seahawks?
Another tough one because Fournette seems to have lost his sea legs somewhere along the way. Davis seems to be that guy, but I'm still going Fournette. I think Fournette's I like him more, and I like the fact that the Seahawks are relatively healthy. Jimmy Graham's he's been battling a few things, but he's still likely to play this week. And he's been their number one red zone target this year. I think he's got 9 touchdowns in his last 8 games, something like that. So don't expect Davis to get a lot of touchdowns. Maybe he'll get a lot of yards on the ground, but touchdowns where you're going to get the majority of your points. I think Fournette's going to have a larger role in this game, so I'm going Fournette.
I agree, but that Seattle defense against the run has been pretty good in recent weeks, but I also like Fournette. All right, 3 more games here to wrap it up. Eagles-Rams, better play Carson Wentz or Jared Goff in a battle for playoff positioning?
Battle against the 1 and 2 draft picks from a couple of years ago. I don't know. It's hard to bet against Carson Wentz, but Jared Goff's also been really. You can't really go wrong here. If you have both guys, I'm still starting Carson Wentz. Zach Ertz is hurt though, so there's one thing that you can kind of, if you're trying to play into your checks and balances in your head. So maybe you do want to go Jared Goff. It's really up to your discretion. Me personally, hard to go against Carson Wentz. I think Alshon Jeffrey has been the rock there all year, and he's still healthy, and he's going to have a great game in Ertz's absence. So I'm going Carson Wentz.
I'm going to go with Wentz as well, and Alshon Jeffrey just got paid this week, too, as he signed a contract extension, so good for him. Ravens Steelers, Le'Veon Bell, over under 85 yards against a tough Baltimore defense.
I'm going to go over. First off, and for my sake, he needs to have over. I need him to do well for me to win. So it might be a little bit of a biased answer there, but I still think Le'Veon's going to have over 85 in this game. I believe he's really not had many under 100-yard rushing games this year. I'd have to check his exact stats, but I know that he's had, for the majority of the games he's played this year, he's had over 85 yards, and I'm no different here. I think he's still going to find his way to have about 100 yards on the ground.
Yeah, I think he'll find a way to get close to that number. I say he's just going to fall just slightly short. What the heck? I'll be a little different there. Alex Collins on the other side, over under 75 yards. I'm going to say slightly under as well. I think you might see a little bit more Woodhead. Terrence West is cleared for a bigger role. He might get a couple carries. Buck Allen might get a couple carries. I like what Collins has done. I'm going to say slightly under 75.
I'm going to go under two. I think Woodhead's going to get him a lot more carries there than people think. So I'm definitely going under for Collins.
The other question I left off is how many Steelers will get kicked out of this game, over under 1.5. But anyway, I'll leave that alone. And you know, the Steelers and Cincinnati hate each other, but the Ravens and Steelers hate each other too. So this could get ugly.
And I was actually just looking up a couple of my stats here, and turns out that Le'Veon hasn't had the year that I thought he's been having. So excuse me for speaking out of context there, but it seems these last 5 weeks. He has been under 100 yards, so maybe that's something to change your answer on. Maybe he will have under 85 yards in this one. So,
well, and some of that has been just because of lack of, against the Packers, I think he had 95 yards on 20 carries. He should be getting 20 carries. They played the Titans a few weeks back. I think he had 10 carries. I mean, if they feed him the rock, even if he gets 20 touches, he's going to go over 100. But I just don't feel like, for whatever reason, they're just not giving him the ball like they should. All right, so
they've been winning games too. They're 5-0 in their last 5, so I think that's due in part to Roethlisberger and Antonio just playing out of their minds. But yep.
100%. So now that brings us to the Monday night tilt: Patriots Dolphins. Tom Brady, he won't have Gronkowski, but Brady does some weird things. So I put the over-under on Tom Brady touchdowns at 2.5. And you know what? You'd think maybe not without Gronkowski, but it's Tom Brady. Why not? Like, you can't predict anything that happens in New England. When you think they're going to run the ball, they pass. When you think they're going to pass, they run. When you think they're going to win by 40, they win by 7. When you think it's going to be a close game, they win by 3 touchdowns. I'm done
That's
trying
why they're such a good team. That's
exactly.
why they always got you on your toes. But so, I think with Brady against Miami, he just always, whenever I watch a Dolphins-Patriots game, he just always tears them up. It doesn't matter. He loves playing against his divisional opponents. I'm still going to go under for Brady. I think that you're going to see a little bit more of the run game this week. I could be very wrong because Belichick seems to always disagree with me whenever I make predictions about the Patriots, and I know I'm not alone in that respect, but I still think that they're going to get a lot more running, and with Gronk out, there goes one of your touchdowns for sure. I'm going to go under for Brady.
I think he finds a way to throw 3, even if they run the ball a lot. I mean, he might swing one out to Burkhead, who can catch the ball. He might even, maybe we'll see James White get back in the good graces.
Yeah, you never know. That's a good name to think about too. Yeah.
Last question of the week: better play at wide receiver, Brandon Cooks or Landry for Miami? I think Landry, just because they spread the ball around so much in New England. I think Landry's probably, and I think Miami's going to be playing from behind, which means more passes, which means probably a better fantasy day.
That's a great point. I was going to say Cooks, but now that you mentioned that, I do think they're going to be playing from behind more. So Jarvis Landry, yeah, definitely. I'm changing my decision completely, Scott. You got me on that one. I think you got to go Landry. That's a very good point. They are going to be playing from behind. I don't think there's any way they win this game, so look for them. And also with the Ajayi trade, they really haven't had a solid runner back there since then, so they're going to rely a lot more on the pass, and they have these last few weeks. So I'm going Landry.
All right. Well, we've reached the end of the show, Kev, and I really hope that you have so now you have a game this week, or do you have a bye? Are you playing?
I do have a game this week.
All right. Well, I'm
I
going to
mean,
wish you all the luck in the world.
oh, thank you so much. I'm getting close. I've never won a fantasy league before. I'll read you my lineup if I can find it here really quick. But yeah, as of right now, I mean, I'm just hoping to try and pull pull out a quick win. I would like to get to the finals. I was close in my fantasy baseball league, came up a little short. So here we go. Let me pull it up here. And you said you have bye weeks?
I have 4 buys. I have 1 game, and I'm glad because I'm out of town. I'm at the Packer game in Cleveland, and I don't know if I'm going to have Wi-Fi. I'm happy that I don't have to worry about 5 lineups because, again, I don't know how much access I'm going to have to make last-minute changes. So it makes me very happy that I only have 1 lineup to worry about this week.
Well, here's my lineup. Russell Wilson, Le'Veon Bell, Melvin Gordon, Dez Bryant, Alshon Jeffrey, Jimmy Graham, Alfred Morris, Seahawks defense, and Matt Prater. So, and on my bench, I just picked up Kenyon Drake because I really like the way he played last week. I'm not sure if I want to put him in there or not. I also have the Vikings defense, Dak Prescott, Emmanuel Sanders, C.J. Anderson on my bench. I'm not going to start C.J. Anderson. He hasn't done much, but any critiques? Anything you might want to throw in there?
No, I think that sounds pretty solid. I think you're in pretty good shape. I think you're going to advance to the next round, and I think that'll be great for you.
Hope so.
I have my only game this week is in my 14-team league, and like I mentioned, I don't have a bye. I'm starting Carr, Devonta Freeman, DeMarco Murray, Michael Thomas, Keenan Allen, Travis Kelce, and then in this league you play individual defensive players. So I have Levante David, Ryan Kerrigan, and Rashad Jones. My kicker is Matt Bryant, and I have Crabtree on the bench. I don't know if I'm going to flip him out for anybody, but I think I'm going to leave the lineup the way it is right now and kind of go from there.
Sounds good to me, Scott. I like that lineup a lot. I didn't know you played with defensive players in the leagues. That's pretty cool.
It's interesting. It's very interesting. So
yeah, it might be something I look into next year for sure. But that's going to take us to the end of the show, Fantasy Wizards Thursday edition. We hope you all enjoyed. We hope you got you set for the playoffs coming up this week. We wish you the very best, and of course, always put questions on the comments in the comments section. We're always happy to answer questions. We'll answer them on next week's show. But for Scott Wisniewski, I'm Kevin Wells. We wish you all the best again in your playoff runs this week. Thank you for watching the Thursday edition of Fantasy Wizards. We'll be back Tuesday night, same time, same place. All right, guys. Have a great evening.